I was actually going to have to start labeling things because the special spot, so it's safe, isn't working. I can't find it.
I'm fine as long as nobody messes with my piles. Somebody messes with my piles, I'm in trouble. Sherry and I have talked about this. You know, archaeologically speaking, where something is in that pile. Do not mess with my pile. It may look disorganized to you, but it all works. All right. The law of sacrifice. Thank you guys so much for being here today in whatever capacity you can be. Again, I just have to say how much I appreciate how the thought that is put into how his books are written, how the flow is, the fact that the law of priorities comes before the law of sacrifice is just so great, isn't it? Isn't it now?
Brilliant.
It really is.
Brilliant. Because really, if you haven't thought through your priorities, it's really hard to know where you're sacrificing and for what.
Well, and the other piece is, like, I know that we did the law of priorities last week, but very timely indeed to do it at the beginning of December, because when do people kind of try to sift through their priorities? Usually it's at the very end of December. And can we just take a mental health check for a moment? When do you think you should be looking at your priorities? After you've gotten through a season of higher stress and commitment and all of those things? Or do you think maybe you should take some time to reassess while things are unfolding? I think I'm actually, I had been listening to it on audio, and I think I'm actually going to get my kids to listen to it on audio today, because I think that it's really good. I love that he says he takes a couple weeks to go through, right? How many times we have, I'm sure I'm not alone in going, oh my gosh, it's the 31st or it's the 30th. Oh, I haven't really given any thought to the next year yet. Oh my goodness, where's that planner? Where are my goal sheets? Where am I? Maybe you are all far more intentional than I have been in the past. I think I'm better at it now than I used to be. But yeah, anyway, that's priorities. We're talking about sacrifice, shall we? Doesn't that just sound like a warm and fuzzy thing to talk about first thing on a Saturday morning?
I think it's interesting. I think we often think about sacrifice as a negative word. Mm-hmm. And what if we thought about sacrifice as a positive word?
Well, that makes me think about like the sacrifice of praise when we talk about it in a faith sense, right? It's very difficult for me to consider the idea of a sacrifice, of praise being a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, it requires laying down of self and focusing on the Lord. And so when you look at that, that's definitely positive. It's not negative, but it is still giving up, right?
But perhaps if we think a little bigger, it doesn't matter where we are, we've given up something. So to be here, we maybe gave up being out in the cold. To be with a child that listens to us, we maybe gave up being not a parent. Maybe we gave up the idea that they could do whatever they liked. And when we gave that up, we then gained a child that respected us, that listened, that we could have a conversation with. I really think it gets back to our priorities and aligned with our values, what giving up means. I don't watch TV. I don't even have a way to watch TV. Somebody posted something about a whole list of TV shows and how many they watched, and none. I don't even know what the names are. Am I giving up TV to do something? I actually don't care about it. So it doesn't even feel like a sacrifice.
It's like Emily Gibson says, everything is 50-50. That just totally reminds me of that. you've got, so for example, I wasn't here last week. And so me giving up time to be with you guys and do this awesome study, yeah, that was something that I had to give up. But it was because of my priorities, and I was unwilling to give up being the parent at the basketball game for my son and I knew that that was a priority for him. Will it always be that way? Not necessarily, but it was something I was glad to do. And I was so happy to be able to. And then again, I feel like basketball is going to be written all over my law of sacrifice, because I had to laugh when it pulled in here and it talked about being a parent and giving up things, giving up much of their free time and sacrifice their resources in order to do a good job of raising children. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling that a little bit right now, because we've been running like crazy with basketball. But I was asked to share on someone's like a virtual sip and share next week. And I thought I could do it because I thought it aligned fine with everything. And then I realized it was smack in the middle of an away basketball game. And this was somebody from a peripheral team and whatever. And I was like, oh, you know what? I messed up with the time zones. I'm so sorry. I actually have prior commitments. I have to be at my son's basketball game for him. And I would love to do it another time. Right. And that was more of a like, oh, it would be fun to go on and see how they would do it. Like, I was being nosy. It was for Natalie Fuller's team, and they've had a lot of success with their sip and shares. I'm like, oh, it would be really nice to be a fly on the wall to sort of see how this goes. And I'm like, you know what? I can take another opportunity another time. This is important. So yeah, I should just write the law of sacrifice for basketball.
So for those of you who had a chance to read the book, they talk in this beginning part about King. And they talk about his sacrifice. So I'd kind of love to hear people's thoughts about that, because he created great change in the country. But he was also arrested and jailed.
And stabbed.
His house was bombed. Like, when we think about sacrifice, he sacrificed things he didn't know he was going to have to sacrifice.
And I would also say for a good that he didn't actually understand he did it for hope, for what he thought could exist, but didn't know what the end result would be, right? You think about being pregnant and going through labor and the sacrifice of labor, but you know you're getting a baby.
Well, you hope you're getting a baby.
You hope you're getting a baby. The chances are good you're getting a baby at the end, right? But he was doing all of this. I love this example. He was doing all of this for the hope of change that he figured like he wouldn't even see in his lifetime. And it was so effective too. Any thoughts on that? Besides that, I love Linda's red plaid coat thing. Hi.
She is on the road. She can't talk to us.
Hi. I'm just enjoying this. I'm enjoying the picture. Thanks. Any thoughts on that? I wonder what it was like for him. Like, I think I would really like to read some more, because I haven't done a ton of reading on Dr. King, but I wonder what kinds of struggles that he went up against and the things he had to give up, even for leadership, because in his community, he was likely a leader even before he was a pastor. If he was so bright that he skipped 9th grade, and he skipped his senior year and enrolled in college. Like, I don't know that there were that many men of color at that point in time that were doing that, or people in general. Purple people. I don't know anybody. Like, who does that? Yeah, that's brilliant. So he was a leader before he was a leader, and probably was sacrificing as he was going along.
Maybe that's a bit of confusion about the term leader. Because leadership isn't just position. And to become a positional leader, somebody believes that you are a leader for you to gain the position. And I don't want to get diverted into those levels.
No, I'm just looking, but I'm kind of wondering, like, it's almost like, and I don't want to say this, this is a very uneducated comment, but almost like he skipped the positional leader. Like he was a leader before he had position.
Well, he actually had position at a very young age. He was student president in high school. Like he was actually being recognized at a very young age with position by his peers.
And I need to read more about his life because I think that it would be incredibly fascinating to go further in to all of it. Just with the struggle that it would have been being a person of color and having that position. Right? Interesting.
So if we go on a little bit in the book, page 193 in the workbook, John talks about there is no success without sacrifice. Many working people dedicate 4 or more years to attend university. Sacrifice. Athletes sacrifice time at the gym and preparation time on the field. Parents give up free time, sacrifice resources to raise kids, just like you said. For everything you've missed, you've gained something else. And for everything you gain, you lose something. Life is a series of trades, one thing for another. And the price of the trade is the price of the height. So effective leaders sacrifice much that is good in order to dedicate themselves to what is best. That's the way a lot of sacrifice works. So you may be sacrificing good things to gain for yourself something that you believe is better.
That reminds me of something that I'd heard once about Craig Rochelle, who's a pastor of a, well, for lack of better word, mega church. And I know I've shared this before, but every year they reassess their ministries and ask if they are in line with the vision of the church. Are they supporting where we're going? And oftentimes the ministries that they choose to cut or stop having are good. They are good things. There's nothing wrong with them, except that they are not supporting the vision and the direction of the church or the way that the leadership is choosing to go. And so they cut many lucrative ministries that, and by lucrative, I don't mean monetary, many lucrative ministries because they're sacrificing the good in order to dedicate themselves to what is best. I think this, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the other interesting, he goes through kind of giving up to stay up, but he says the higher the level of leadership, the greater the sacrifice. And as I was reading this one, I was really quite intrigued with his example that he used about an auction. When you start the auction for whatever the item is, there's lots of people bidding. There's lots of people willing to give up that amount of value to receive this product, whatever it might be. But as the price goes higher, there's fewer bidders. There's fewer people willing to make the sacrifice, fewer people willing to give up the bigger amount. And it's the person that pays the highest price that ends up with the item. And I just really found that whole piece interesting. The higher you go, the more it costs. And we see lots of people that reach a certain height, and we talk about it being the law of the lid, we talk about various things. But one of the pieces is the law of sacrifice. They're
Mhm.
not willing to sacrifice anymore to go up to the next level.
I think that this, I really, when I hit this point in this chapter, I'm like, this is so massive. And with like bottom of page 100 or top of page 194, where there's that awesome little graphic
Yeah.
in the workbook.
Yeah.
I think sometimes from my perspective, from things I've seen, is that sometimes the responsibilities that get larger are personal responsibilities. Okay, you are now a leader. You are now personally responsible for how you react in situations. You are now personally responsible to have grown-up emotions that are healthy. You are now personally responsible to not go and start saying bad things, the first sign of trouble, to other people. You are now responsible that if something goes wrong, yeah, you know what, let your leader know. But guess what? You now have, your leadership has gone up. This is where you are. It is your turn. This is your time to deal with what is going on, right? Like any of these things, right? And I think about, because of the industry that we're in, because people can literally choose to just be a connector, leadership isn't demanded of people. It's an invitation here. And so I'm super proud of all of you guys for choosing to accept that invitation and step into the leadership that's available for you. Not everyone does. And yeah, sometimes people go, okay, this is far too uncomfortable. The law of sacrifice, I think I'm out, right? I'll just be a connector and I'll just collect my check, whatever it looks like, and I'll just keep on going. But those of us who choose to dig in and stay, especially in this industry, and probably in others as well, because it's always a choice. Everything's 50-50, everything is a choice. If we want to continue to go up, like he says, we need to take responsibility in a lot of different ways. And I love to say that I see that often on our team, that you guys are willing to take responsibility and grow in leadership. So, but I think sometimes we don't think about that, like our own responsibility to our own emotions and how our emotions affect other people.
I listened to him talk a little bit about the law of sacrifice, and it really hit hard. He talked about one of the times when he was having to make some decisions about where he wanted to go. And he actually has a really interesting process of reflection, evaluation, all of those things. I think I mentioned one of the things last week, so I won't repeat it, but he talks about giving up to be able to receive. And he talks about giving up the affirmations of people telling you you've done a great job for the accomplishment of actually moving forward. He talks about giving up current financial gain for future potential. So that investing in yourself, investing in personal and leadership growth. He talks about giving up immediate pleasure for that personal growth. He talks about giving up quantity of life for quality of life. He talks about giving up security, which for many of us is really hard, for significance.
I want to talk about that.
Yes.
For a really quick second, because in our family, and with my husband and the vocation or his career choice, Nolan is, and he'd be totally fine if I shared this. He's a very secure, like he likes to have things just so. He likes to be able to plan everything out. He's very type 1. And for him, he always dreamed of becoming a police officer. Law enforcement was something on his heart because he has such a he's such a strong sense of right and wrong and justice and wanting other people to just live lives that are safe and protected, and you know, his heart goes out to the vulnerable. And so when he chose to become a police officer, he went into depot and our babies were 12 months old. He went in 2 weeks after their first birthday, the girls, and Lucas was 3.5. And the hardest thing for him was to sign that form saying we could be sent anywhere in Canada. And if they actually chose to, they could send us anywhere in the world if that was their choice. And that was really hard for him. He gave up security in we had a home, had a really low mortgage, had a great community that we were in. We were established there. He gave up a career that he knew in order to go and serve in this way. And it all through this whole law of sacrifice, I just kept thinking, like, this is one of those things where nothing is promised, right? The sacrifice is continuously asked of, like it's always asked more of, and more and more and more. And then you get to the significance piece, right? And he's like, maybe I will be able to make a difference. And that's why he chose to. He got tired of picking people up in the ambulance and then just, you know, patching them up and putting them back out there, and patching them up and putting them back out there. He wanted to do something that was going to be more impactful. And, you know, I don't know that the career is the bottom line of it, but it's the expectation. So not like the other day, he wouldn't have done it anyway, but his knowledge, he was driving along the road. It was ridiculously cold. And we have a community, well, it's called the Ranchero Society. It's for kids who are either in the foster system or something like that. It's not, they work alongside social services, but because it's in his area, there are kids often that are running away from the ranch. They have no legal basis to keep them there. They just hope that the kids stay. It's ridiculous. But anyway, he's plain clothes, driving our vehicle, and he sees this young man walking like this in the cold away from the ranch. And it's not close to the city. Like on a day like that, you would freeze. It was really cold. And so he pulls over and he thinks, he's like, well, maybe I should call the detachment and get them to come get him. And he's like, no, I'm going to see if I can get him to come with me. And so he pulled over and he's like, hey, psst, come here. And so the kid comes over and he goes, where are you going? Well, I'm going to my grandparents. He's like, well, where do they live? He's like, Regina. And Nolan goes, it's too cold to be walking today. He's like, I got to get to my grandparents' house. And he goes, you're from the ranch, aren't you? And the kid looks at him. He's like, how do you know about the ranch? He goes, I just do. The kid's like, do you live around here? He's like, well, I live in Regina. And the kid's really confused. And Nolan's like, hop in. I'll take you back. Oh, I don't want to go back. It's too cold. It's not good for you to be out here. Let me take you back. And the kid got in the vehicle and Nolan drove him back to the ranch. Knocked on the door. The worker had no clue that he was even gone. And he takes the worker aside and he goes, hey, look, like, I'm off duty, but I'm RCMP, so it's okay. She was alarmed that he'd gone with just a total stranger. He's like, let's just focus on the fact that he came back safe today, right? But because of his knowledge of the ranch, of the issues of kids running away, he was able to stop. And to me, that's the significance. It's not the surge, it's not the pomp and circumstance. That's the significant piece that has been brought along with the career. He didn't get bit. He didn't get punched. Maybe that's the payoff. I don't know. That's the usual. But he's like,
those are all good things.
If I told him I was RCMP, he's like, he would have run.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we would have a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, just a little aside on that piece.
So who else has thoughts on security to significance? Because this is a big one, I think.
Can you share that, like what you read? I don't know if you can share that anywhere with us.
Can I share
You know
that?
what? Throw it in the comments of the 21 laws when we're done. Like,
Sure, I'll just do that.
is it possible? If it's possible.
So
Oh my gosh, never mind. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I love your remarkable. Brenna.
we started by talking about the law of priorities and the fact that you have to prioritize before you actually get to the law of sacrifice. And under the application section, he talks about creating two lists. First, list the things you are willing to give up in order to go up. And second, list the things you are not willing to sacrifice to advance. And this comes back to values. What do you value? What are you not willing to give up? Because quite frankly, once you have that list, lots of other things just end up on the other list. And that's part of the prioritization process. But knowing what are the things that you're not willing to compromise on. And those are the things that when you're not willing to compromise on those, no matter how hard the conversations are, because there's something you value, you're willing to have the difficult conversation about it, whether it's with someone above you or someone below you, that they are things that you're going to stand by no matter what, and regardless of the situation or regardless of who's involved.
I love that we come back to values so often.
That's a really good point.
I feel like we need to have like a quarterly values workshop just to bring everybody back in. But it's so true. It's so true. I mean, like for example, if I can use the example again with the basketball, that's not a hard and fast for me, but I do want to be there often enough that my child feels supported and all of those things, right? But I am willing to give up at some point in time, depending on the need, right? It's not a black and white, hard and fast. And so I'm sure that there'll be things like that for you guys too.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. He's got a couple more, and one of them is giving up to move to excellence. And if there's a struggle anywhere, I think that's a huge struggle for me. That desire to be accepted, that desire to fit in, that desire to be part of a community or in a group or whatever that might look like, to move to excellence. That desire to look good to peers.
Well, that's shining a light on network marketing right there. Because depending on the circle that you run in, simply admitting that you're a part of a network marketing company and that this is what you're choosing to do has negative connotations. Not for everyone, but
just even the acceptance of working from home versus the office persona.
Or being a stay-at-home mom versus going out and working, because there's pieces on either side of it.
Yeah. And the next one he mentions is moving from addition. So giving up addition to move to multiplication.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I even have my head all wrapped around that one yet. But giving up the 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 to get to 3 times 3 times 3 times 3.
And in order to do the 3 times 3, it's if you want to go fast, go alone, versus if you want to go far, go together. And to do that, to do the 3 times 3, in order to go far with more people, you need to slow down. And are you willing to go slow at the beginning, knowing that it's going to pay off by going far over time?
Mhm.
And are you really willing to do that? Or do you just want to get there as fast as possible?
Trisha said something with that too. Absolutely. She said that's the power of 3 in Plexus.
Yeah.
And it is.
That would be the difference between investing your time to bring one person on or investing your time to develop one person to bring 3 for them on.
It's interesting because I was on a call this week with a bunch of other Jewel leaders, and it was brought up that, like, Genevieve had said, well, we have people fast starting golds all over the place. And somebody else said, yeah, but I find that they burn out. And somebody else said, well, that's because that's if they don't have duplication. If they fast start and they duplicate, they won't burn out and they'll see the joy in it. And it's not just them pushing the boulder, right? So yes, you can go fast on your own and you can get that fast start piece and you can get to gold that fast, or you can take a second, you sponsor 6, and then you teach them how to go and do some of those things and you work with those people. Are you doing the immediate work on your own front line? No, but you might as well be, because like you're seeding and it's sustainability, right?
It's interesting because after he sort of provided the list, he said, this is why so many people get 2/3 of the way, but don't climb any higher, is because they made a decision not to sacrifice. Sacrifice was their limiting factor.
What was the first one on that list again?
Affirmation. So having people tell you that you did a good job.
I was writing mad notes and it squirreled.
I can type it up and put it into the comments.
Whatever. If that serves your day, do that. If it doesn't, it's okay. We can rewatch the video, take notes. Sorry, I just need a moment.
So just thinking about those different things, which one, if anybody's able to talk on the screen, and I think lots of people aren't. So if you are able to talk, like you're not driving, all those good things, did any one of those speak to you more or differently than the others? And I'd love if you shared.
Can you actually just repeat them?
I can. So affirmation to accomplishment, giving up current financial gain for future potential, giving up immediate pleasure for personal growth, giving up quantity of life for quality of life, giving up security for significance, giving up acceptance for excellence, and giving up addition for multiplication.
I think just while everybody's finishing writing or thinking, I think that sometimes, depending on where you are at personal growth, when you come into come into, say, a business like this, or a business in general, it takes you longer to get through the head trash, the personal development, like all of those things, to get to a place where you can be like, yes, I can continue to sacrifice, I don't know, financially or time, or, you know, like I was saying, the basketball game, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? If I had a massive thing, yes, I could miss it. It wouldn't be, but my values are like, you can kind of trade off. It's the 50-50 again. But depending on how long it's taken you to get to that point where you have been sacrificing all along, and then to continue to be like, okay, I get it now, I'm going to continue to sacrifice, that can be exhausting. And I think that that's where you get the 2/3 often, where people feel like they've been sacrificing, but maybe they weren't sacrificing for the right thing, to do the right activity, with the right mindset, like all of those things, right? But we only can learn, we only know what we know. When we know better, we do better. And it's a process. And isn't it great that there's no like timeline? It's not like the game of perfection where all of a sudden, if you don't hit it before the buzzer, everything pops out and you have to start all over again, or you're out of the game or whatever. We have time.
And I do think it goes back to last week's priorities, in terms of your progress in one area may be slower because your priority over here outweighs. And therefore, you're sacrificing that progress because of this priority.
And there's nothing wrong with it. And that's the thing, like some, you know, you get people that are like, I'm so sorry, I haven't been around because, you're like, well, obviously that's the priority and that's great.
Totally. Totally.
But you know what? I actually was thinking about this week, about how uncomfortable a person is willing to be for success. And I thought about Fallon. Rabe was Black. Thought about Fallon. And I thought about the time that she was like, you know, Tiffany and I would sit on my couch or sit by the pool and we go through the phone book. And they were literally phoning people like, yeah, you can get all the information you want to from people that are like, you don't need to cold call, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? The people that have staying power and massive businesses are willing to do the things that other people just simply aren't. And maybe that thing for you isn't the phone book, but maybe it's literally like reaching out to 3 new people a day. Like it doesn't have to be a mountain, but the 3 people could look like a mountain, right?
And I think Diana makes a good comment. I feel like I had to sacrifice a lot this week, but I did it so I could move forward.
Yes.
Because what sacrifice is for each of us is different.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's a really good point, Diana. It's to maintain that consistency. Yes.
And I love that she said, so you could move forward. You had that payoff in mind, like the motion forward, the sacrifice was going to happen, but it was for this.
Yeah.
Proud of you. I even think about Cheryl doing Agribition, the massive amount of sacrifice that took, huge sacrifice in time, not even just the physical time of being there, but organizing it, financially getting things put together, figuring out her family situation, figuring out if there were people that were going to be able to help her, figuring out if she'd ever be able to go to the bathroom. Luckily she was by the bathrooms. It was okay. But it was the short-term sacrifice for the long-term gain. And it's having that entrepreneur mindset, that vision for the future, right? Sherry, what was it? I keep on thinking that I need to make like signs or t-shirts or something. Keeper of the vision. Genevieve told, was it Genevieve or Sonia that told us that as leaders,
I think that was Sonia.
Sonia, that you are the keeper of the vision for your team. The vision might be short-sighted, but you got to have one, right? And Cheryl has a massive vision for what could be, and that's why she chose all of those sacrifices to move forward.
Yeah, I think she did. She called it a vision keeper. And I think that's so, so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's sacrifices that we're not willing to pay and sacrifices that we are willing to pay. And I think that's all part of our growth journeys as we go forward.
Yep.
And that's probably a really good exercise for the today and the days forward is think about what are you willing to give up?
And the sacrifice doesn't have to be like, it could literally be comfort. And oftentimes that is what we're giving up.
That might be really important.
I'm speaking to myself here. I have a really hard time getting out of bed early because I like sleep and I have a really comfortable bed. And it's nice to be quiet and in the dark with my eyes closed. And I like it. I really like that. But I know that if I could put another hour or 2 hours on the front part of my day, because it's not like I'm not getting enough sleep. It's because I just like to sleep. I'm not saying that I want to go on to the unhealthy and sleep for 4 hours and work for 20. But if I get up early and get 2 extra hours into my day, that could really serve me well in doing things like getting my body moving. Because even though I don't like to get up, I'm a morning person. My brain starts firing first thing in the morning, as soon as my feet are on the floor.
After you're active.
Well, sometimes we need a little bit of help, depending on how late we stay up. I'm actually kind of toying with the idea of like getting up early and napping like siesta in the afternoon for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then staying up late because my brain only works in the morning and really late at night.
So just as a side note, is the sacrifice the getting up in the morning, or is the sacrifice that quiet time at night and going to bed earlier?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do better than I used to, but it's comfort, right? Is that really sacrificing for me? No. Would I miss the sleep at the time when I'm trying to get out of bed? Maybe, but probably not. Like how many sunrises you would see, or how many more sunrises you would see in the summertime. The opportunities to sit down and have conversations with my kids when they first fall out of bed, or time with my husband. Sherry, you know what I'm talking about. Time with my husband first thing in the morning. More time to read, more time to get those things done. Like, is that really like, if we're really talking about sacrifice and people are like, I am going to stop eating carbs. Like that's a sacrifice I'm not willing to make. Let's just be honest. But some people are.
But then we have to evaluate, does the sacrifice move us forward in the direction we want to go? And I think
Carbs
that's
totally don't.
a big piece of that. Okay, I feel like we're rambling.
I'm going shopping with Linda.
Yeah, Linda's shopping and I don't know where she's at, but that looks pretty interesting.
So yeah, on the bottom of page 198, if you have the workbook, it has this whole fill in the blanks and commit to being committed, because you know that if you write it down, a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? We know all the things. So we would encourage you guys to think of one thing that you need to sacrifice in order to get what you want. And I think that that's just the piece, is you need to keep in mind what the sacrifice is for, right? What the labor is for.
Yeah.
Like my OBGYN said, honey, it's labor. If it was easy, they'd call it a party. Okay.
And I think going into the season that we're coming into, we are all going to be making decisions, choices, sacrifices, whatever word we choose to use, about the best way for us to use our time during this time period. So I think we're all going to be in this process of saying, you know what, today's my family day and I'm not at work.
Mhm.
It's not a sacrifice, it's a choice, and it's going to be the right thing for me today. And maybe I did some extra in advance so that I could do this, just like we do the extra work before we go on a holiday, because we know that we want to get it done. So yeah.
And Diana said it's like when we're flying out on holidays, we will get up at 4 a.m., but wouldn't do that on a regular day.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And with those family days, like what you mentioned, they're awesome. And if you're present and you remember, because I always forget, taking pictures can be a great thing that will help you with your business going forward in the weeks to come. If you're going
Sure.
out and doing things, remember to
For
take
sure.
the dang picture. Why can't I ever remember to take the pictures?
Take the picture.
So bad at that. All right, guys. So
So I think
law
that's
of
awesome. The law of timing is next week, and that will be our last one before Christmas.
Mhm.
That'll be our last one in December.
Yeah, I think so.
So law of timing.
Wherever
And
my
then we will resume again the 9th, I believe it is, 8th probably, of January, since we will not have
Would
book
be on the
study on the 1st.
Correct. Hey, if you guys are doing, I'm just going to give a little plug. If you guys are doing some house chores or anything like that today, and you want some awesome training videos to listen to, check out Diamonds in December in the Leader Lounge. They have been so good, so good. And if you feel like going back in the archives, there's lots of them posted in Team Awesome. There's lots of them posted in Grow from previous years. That the advice never ages. It really doesn't. And just for kicks, if you want a fun account to follow, somebody who's doing things differently, because that's all, the leadership is all doing things differently, right? Like this, the law of sacrifice is not normal. This is for people who want better in their lives.
Yeah.
Emily Roberts and her husband Scott have just purchased a ranch, and they're debt free. And she is living her dream with having, Sherry, did you know that that's like regular people's dreams, to have a couple cows and do some of those things? And so for those of you who are ranchers, it might be really funny for you. But I'm so happy for her because they chose the hard. They chose the law of sacrifice. They had a beautiful big house. They sold it. They moved into a smaller one, albeit with a pool, paid off all of their debt, sold that house, moved into their fifth wheel, have been living in that fifth wheel with their 3 children for the last 4 or 5 months. And then instead of building, decided to purchase this ranch. And so if you want to see the law of sacrifice walked out, you can scroll back on her page. And that's one of those sacrifices that not a lot of people are willing to make. So anyway, thank you guys so much for your time. Sherry, thank you for your wisdom. And happy birthday, Diana. I hope that you get spoiled rotten today. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye.